Hi, Ilan. It's great talking to you as usual, and thanks for obviously making the time to talk to me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about the situation in regards to the coronavirus, where you live right now in Haifa.
hmm Well, we are from this moment, we are in a total lockdown. People are only allowed to walk at the distance of 100 meters from their home. They are not allowed to do anything in groups, even as a couple. They have to do all by themselves. Only grocery shops and pharmacies are open, and the public transport is about to go down as well. And the idea is they are going to employ the army as well in order to try and impose this, curfew on the people.
And how long is this due to last right now?
They didn't put a date on this. They will review it, I think, like the other countries, they will review it within a week or 10 days, and then they will decide um, whether to extend it or to change the policy.
Netanyahu, at the start of the crisis, said that, so Netanyahu, who is some sort of the prime minister, even if he's not, but he is,
Yes.
said that every state agency was on board to fight the virus, which includes the Mossad, etc. And the Association of Civil Rights in Israel condemned the use of emergency measures that were passed recently by Israel, including using surveillance and spy software, etc. Can you tell us more about what this all means?
Yes, so well, one has to say that Israel, since its existence, is run by emergency regulation, actually, and they are not always implemented. They can be implemented at any given moment, so this is not a big deal. It was usually imposed and is usually imposed on the Palestinian population. That's why Israeli Jews are not totally aware of their existence. It's very rarely in the history it was used against Jews or Jewish organizations. Now, for the first time, it is suggested that it would be used against the population as a whole. So definitely, this is the big brother watching in every possible way. The excuse is that it helps to map the corona infected people. There are much better means of doing it. So one has suspicion that this is not really helpful in terms of defeating the virus, but it's just another manifestation of the power of the Secret Service, the Mossad. We have an army with a state, as we know, and now we have a mini dictator who's using the crisis to get rid of whatever is left of the Israeli democracy in terms of balance of power, in terms of freedom of expression, of movement, and so on. Time will tell whether he would be able to sustain it also in the post-colonial, so to speak, era.
So you just spoke about democracy and the erosion of whatever what was left of democracy in Israel. When you talk about democracy in Israel, you have to talk about the Palestinians. And what does it mean, in your opinion, for the people of Gaza who have been under curfew, lockdown, blockade for years now? This new virus and the response of Israel. I was reading recently that the Norwegian Refugee Council couldn't access Gaza now due to the new restriction put in place by the Israeli government. So, what does it mean for the Palestinians and for the people
Yeah.
of Gaza?
First of all, we should say even the curfew that Israeli Jews are now experiencing is nothing like the curfew that Palestinians, both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, have been experiencing in the last 53 years. So it's still not comparable. So the issue of the curfew itself for the Palestinians is nothing new. But you're absolutely right to point to the human catastrophe that is unfolding in the Gaza Strip. Because if Israel will continue the siege and the blockade, and given that Israel itself, with its policies, has severely undermined the health infrastructure in Gaza. Gaza is a place where there is an acute shortage of medicine, of beds, of ICU units. Anything that is needed for treating your society in normal times is not available there. So definitely it won't be there if the epidemic will really start affecting people there. So I think that we are here in a situation where it will be very difficult to attract the world's attention that within the overall catastrophe, and it's a terrible catastrophe, what's happening in Italy and Spain in particular, and what happened in China before that. We are not underrating the human cost there. But compared to that, what's going to be can happen in Gaza is really something else, and is not the result of the virus. It's a result of an ideology, of a state policy, of inhumanity and barbarism that we have experienced here before, but now the price can be very, very high. And I hope that it's possible to attract international attention, although everyone seems to be understandably obsessed with their own crisis at this moment in time.
Is
I
there?
should add that, may I add just that this is true not only about Gaza, it's true about the refugees on the Turkish-Greek border, on the Turkish-Syrian border, in the refugee camps in Yemen, in Libya. We have vulnerable communities around the world that it seems that the international organizations are unable now to engage with them. And not that their engagement before was much help, but it was at least for some of them providing welfare and some assistance. People are sort of prouding themselves that there is kind of a new human solidarity. The biggest human solidarity is even for people in Spain and Italy, if possible, to look at those who are even in a more miserable situation. But knowing human nature and knowing politics, I'm very apprehensive about these particular vulnerable communities, and Gaza is one of them. And at least in the other ones, you can see that the international community has some means of getting there. But Gaza is this mega prison, this ghetto, which is a bit like, a ship, one of those ships that was locked down in a harbor and nobody can reach it. And this is something that I hope humanity and the international community would kind of transcend beyond its already attempts to deal with the virus, and not to neglect the particular areas of disasters that are unfolding in front of our eyes.
Another thing that is actually quite ironic is that potentially many Israeli Jews that are going to contract the virus are going to be treated by Palestinian doctors, right? Because a lot of doctors in Israel are Palestinians.
Yes.
Is there any? I mean, that's quite ironic in a way, right?
It is ironic because, in particular, this moment in time, because of the mini political crisis that we have here between Likud on the one hand and the new party, blue-white, Kahol-Lavan, led by Gantz, the issue of racism towards the Arab citizens of Israel has emerged with full power, because the only way the Gantz party, as I call it, can form a government is with the help of the representative of the Palestinians in the Israeli Knesset. Now, in order to prevent it, the Likud under Netanyahu has started a campaign, a racist campaign, like the one we've never seen before. And I've been, I know this place very well. And racism in this place was always rampant. But I don't remember such a kind of a racist campaign of that kind, so insidious and cruel. And That's on the one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is, as you say, so many Israeli Jews will owe their lives to Palestinian doctors, and one hopes that this clash between the racist discourse from above and the reality in the hospitals from below would maybe waken up some Israelis to see how deceitful and how hateful this campaign is and how unjustified it is, given what they would owe to the brave Palestinian, and not only doctors. I mean, Palestinians also are important factor in the health system altogether, with all its auxiliary forces and so on. So, yes, this is an irony, but let's hope that at least out of that irony, some kind of an awakening would come about the racist nature of the government, its policies, its discourse, and its overall treatment of the Palestinian citizens of Israel.
So I'm going to ask my final question now. A lot of people are saying, including journalists and analysts, that there is going to be a before coronavirus and an after coronavirus. What's your opinion on this? Could the after be something very different from what we're seeing right now in societies in general?
I think that there are basically two options, but of course we have to be careful with prophesizing. I think on what we've seen worldwide is that the neoliberal politics and economy had failed utterly in the face of the virus. I mean, it's not the only reason, but one of the main reasons for the failure of governments in Europe and in the United States to deal properly with the virus has to do with the new liberal system of privatization of essential services, lack of social solidarity, and total disregard for the role of the state and politics in the welfare of the society. So these neoliberal factors, either locally or globally, who made a lot of money from their dehumanized or their lack of humanity in their policies and their greed for money, have lost a lot of money. The problem is that they might want to get it back. And in the past, they were never too sensitive about human rights and civil rights or workers' rights when they wanted to make more money. And if they lost a lot of money, they would be even greedier and even less attentive to these rights. So that's one scenario I'm apprehensive of. Of course, that depends on the left, what we used to call the left, which I hope is still there. This is the moment where the left has to say, no, what we learned from this crisis is that we need the state to be back there, investing in infrastructure, nationalizing what needs to be nationalized, not allowing the market to dictate to us issues that are concerned with human life, human welfare, the quality of life. It's a moment where you need an alternative plan that is convincing and is uniting the fragmented left in order that the greedy neoliberal elite will not succeed in it would be a desperate attempt to regain all that it lost in this crisis. And they lost a lot. They lost a lot. The same is true about authoritarian politicians, these alpha male that have ruined our political lives in the West. They are going to lose votes and confidence, and they will do everything possible. And we know they have no scruples, including wars, including civil wars, in order to regain the power. Once you have such power, you don't easily give it up. But it really depends on us. I'm not deterministic here. I think there is a rare opportunity through politics of identification between groups that are oppressed economically, socially, nationally, to form a united kind of front, both locally and globally, because the facts are on our side. The question is, will we be able to convey them, as we failed in the past, exactly to the electorate that would be hit worst by this crisis, and to say to them, come on, this is the logic and the explanation of what happened, and this is the logic of how to avoid it in the future.